Hello everyone, this is Hourai, beginning to go live, going to play Maiden Spell, joined here by commentator Saya Duck from the Maiden Spell community. We used to commentate tournaments together.
Hello, I'm Saya. You probably remember me if you've been a Maiden Spell watcher a long time ago. It's been a while since I've, of course, been super active on the tournament end, but you know, my good friend Hourai DM'd me about this, and I was like, sure.
So, this is a bullet hell battler game, which means it's kind of a versus game, but I am actually going to do a speedrun of it where I just beat the normal difficulty with all four characters, which consists of the four main routes in this game. I'm just going to jump right into it, and we can talk about the game.
Yeah, and I think watchers will be a little disoriented immediately because there's one main difference, and this is a horizontal game, right?
Yes. Oh, nice. I got hit already. Luckily, getting hit is not actually a big deal in this game because your lives refresh every time you get through the equivalent of a spell card, which is called a Magnus in this game.
It does try to, I guess, emulate that 1v1 aspect a little bit because between the spell cards, between the Magnuses, you do have those little 1v1 portions that tend to be a little easier than what most players would expect from the 1v1 opponents. But I think, I guess on Worm, the easiest thing to describe is that, of course, it's the first fight, right? Like, it is kind of like the tutorial.
Worm, to be clear, being the character I'm fighting right now, the yellow one, and I am the green character, Hero of Frost. Finally unlocked all my attacks.
the tutorial mode really showing up here, but with the horizontal nature of this game and also the fact that it is inherently a PvP game, there's a lot of motion. Enemies will move a lot across the screen. They'll use space very widely, and of course the space moves as well, right? It's a little bit bigger than the screen itself.
Yeah. And one of the most disorienting things if you're a Touhou player and you actually start playing this is that your attacks change your speed when you use them. Every time you use an attack, that has an effect on your speed. So if you're looking for just the traditional shmup experience, this is not the game to play, I'm afraid. Alright, so kind of just explaining the game here, because these initial bosses are fairly easy, and this game actually does have a lot of pretty cheesable attacks. This character here is the Lich of Flowers. She's one of the monsters, and we're going to be seeing her in every run. So, as you can see, I have to hit them 3 times, and then that unlocks the Magnus. One of the huge components of the speedrun is just getting hits as fast as possible when I'm in the hit phase, the versus phase, and on the Magnuses it just comes down to DPS, really. This attack's a little annoying, but step a bit to get through it. I'll explain what that means later, because it's not as prominent for this attack.
Yeah, but back when I did play, the Lich of Flowers was my main after all. It's one of the only characters that really just sets up terrain on the screen with static bullets that last quite a while.
Yeah, although her White is just a copy of Red Hood's White, of course. He stole it from her. But Lich does have the most terrain-setting attacks of anyone.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who've actually played Maiden Spell haven't really touched the single player too much, but if you do play Rabbit and Steel, the more known game out of the two from Minodev, you might see a little bit of inspirations, callbacks in Rabbit and Steel that you haven't before, because a lot of the stuff there does have a lot of basis in the single player mode of this game.
Oh yeah, we'll point out Depth Basic when we get to it, but I should mention this character is the Royal Arcanist, and she is the first human opponent that we are fighting. The human opponents are going to be different in every run, and, oh, I did that a little bit wrong, but that's okay. That means I'm actually going to be playing as Arcanist later, because all of the humans are playable and have their own route. That is not true of all of the monsters. Not true of most of the monsters.
Oh, and in that Magnus, you could actually dead zone the spinny attack, so...
Yeah, there are a lot of dead zone exploits in this game, as we will be seeing. Arcanist is a pain to handle as Sun, who's the other character that fights Arcanist, but as Frost, she's actually fairly chill in the versus mode. Okay, so here Arcanist used some debuffs, and one of the debuffs, which you will not find in PvP, is that she makes me larger. When I'm larger, I do more damage, so actually I appreciate this, although my character becomes a lot more unwieldy. This probably reminds you all of a certain Touhou boss.
And again, like as you touched on before, right? A lot of the inconsistencies come in not the actual Magnuses, but in the 1v1 portion itself, because sometimes the CPU gets a little bit too good.
Absolutely. Which we'll definitely be seeing at some points, including in this run. By the way, right now I'm doing a trick called a stutter step, which is where I mash the focus button and the basic button at the same time. The main attack I've been using this whole time is basic, and focus is the key that highlights my hitbox and makes me move slower. And for Frost specifically, it actually modifies your basic a bit. Right there, I used it so that I could move a lot faster. Right now, as you can see, my movement's very slow, but when I stutter step, I can go faster. And that's fine right now. I'm just gonna wait for it to come back.
And over here, we're seeing a bit of a departure from the single player, from the 1v1 version, right? The death toll is actually useful for the story mode opponents. It chases you instead of being...
the death toll.
The death toll in 1v1, it might be the most useless thing in the game. It's basically a hitbox that comes active after a long time. It ends up doing nothing in most PvP battles.
Yeah. So right here is Depth Secret. You probably recognize her basic as having a bullet that is very similar in Rabbit and Steel if you've played that. And Depth is convenient in single player because you can kind of predict her movements a bit more easily than the average character, at least in my opinion. Most of the time she's pretty tame. I try to use stun waves to catch them, but...
A lot of it comes down to shotgun, right? Because that just slows her down completely. Usually just immediately hittable by like your basic from range.
That big attack that shoots a wall of bullets, I really want her to use that because it slows her down. Alright, another fairly chill attack. Gets hard in a second, but... Oh, whoops, I accidentally... That's fine, that's fine. I shouldn't have called that attack easy. I should have respected it. Didn't appreciate that.
Basically Ada's blessing if you think about it. But...
You know, you're right about that. Single player variant of Ada's blessing. Sorry, that's to the non-M&S players in the audience. That is a reference to a joke made by a player named Ada about how Depth's wide attacks, which are the very small bullets she shoots, will randomly hit you sometimes in versus mode, in multiplayer if you forget about them.
It's also a reason why in this game, generally slower bullets are more dangerous than fast ones in that versus mode. Because there's a very realistic ability to like stack them on top of each other and create deadlier patterns. As Hourai is pretty familiar with, being a Sun Priestess player back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And another trick I'm not going to be using much here is like just general combinations of Frost's unfocus basic, and wide. By the way, here's the Sun Priestess in question. This is one of the hardest characters to fight in against the CPU. I mean, oh, okay, I'm safe. The roll happened in time. Her attacks are just scary.
Yeah, you might see those diamonds and recall a certain Touhou attack, actually, with the crossing pattern.
A Touhou attack, or 3, or, well, at least 2 I can think of anyway.
Yeah.
This is a pretty exploitable fight, though. Which is a good thing, because or else her final attack would be one of the hardest things in the game. Oh my gosh. So you just saw a rare instance of my using Frost's wide attack, which shoots out those cards. It's worth noting that before this game got balance patches, wide, I'm pretty sure wide had better DPS in single player than Frost's basic, but now it happens a lot slower and at a slower rate, and it's not the menace that it once was, which is presumably for the better. Oh, I probably should have stun waved at some point here.
It also doesn't reach as far as it used to. It used to go like double the distance now, so really affected in single player. And other than that, I think a big thing about Sun Priestess, right, is a character that really tries to build up space control, right? Just as many wides as possible, setting up with the basic to catch you hesitating in movement. So when it comes to single player, always a character to have to watch out for if you press a committal button.
Absolutely, that was my favorite part about playing Sun Priestess. Oh, I got a little greedy there. I was hoping to get a stun wave in before more of those diamonds came out. That is okay. This game gives me a lot of leeway, and by the way, if I ever do run out of lives, that means I just go to the next of my 3 cards. So it's really not that big a deal. Okay, this trick's a bit tricky. I got it a little bit wrong, that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Tricky.
You're really trying to get into that inner ring there to try and exploit to that kind of dead zone to not have to deal with the diamonds at all.
Oh, I got a little too close there to apply, but that is okay. If I were not doing the dead zone here, then this attack would definitely be one of the hardest in the game. It is really hard, especially on the high difficulties. Okay, and now we're at the final boss. Every character has a different monster as a final boss. This monster is Storm Beast, and she is a pain to deal with in versus mode because she is very fast and will dodge all your attacks.
Yeah.
A little early. That's okay.
She is notably, like, her speed is notable, right? Especially because a lot of players, when playing the character herself, tend to run into things a lot because of her speed. Makes it difficult to control, even with focus.
Yeah. It takes a very skilled player to master Storm Beast, which is probably why some of the best players in the game play Storm Beast. I'll be talking about one of them later for some historical reasons, but regardless, this is actually going pretty well so far. That first attack I like to play pretty risky, but it actually went quite well.
Yeah, especially in a lot of...
This is going very well.
Yeah, I'm surprised too, because whenever you're fighting the Storm Beast CPU especially, she sometimes just runs away and makes it difficult, but this time she's deciding to be quite kind.
Knew we were live.
It's true. Ooh, getting out of the laser just in time there.
Every character in this game is much bigger softy than they let on.
The Thunderstorm Magnus actually feels a lot like Raven Steel, doesn't it?
Oh dear. Yes, it does, though. Oh my gosh, that was not very good. Yeah, a bit of a Simon Says going on.
Oh, and yeah, and we're seeing the difficulty right here because of her movement speed, just macroing everything, just getting out of there, finally getting hit.
Okay, let's hope I do this part right. But yeah, for the record, I turned off dialogue, but this game does have a story. It's the story and lore are quite charming in my opinion. Not as deep as Touhou though. I thought I could be. Oh, never mind. I got a new time record. Yeah, as you can see, it records your best time for these, and somehow still getting new records. The scoring system in this game is the same as speedrunning, but particularly localized to the Magnuses. So it's not really a very in-depth scoring system. And again, speedrun is like fairly similar to just straight-up survival strategies too. All in all, this is not the kind of game you want to go for if you want a traditional shmup. I think I already said that, but it bears repeating because similarities to traditional shmups are not the thing I'd want to showcase this game for, although it does have some patterns that I find rather interesting, which we will get to when they come. Oh, I mean, we've seen a few already. They got a lot more in-depth on the highest difficulty. Alright, and this final attack, Raijin, is a DPS check. It also has a similar weird hitbox thing going on as you saw in the last one. Luckily, as long as I keep shooting, it's not going to be that bad.
I think, I'm not stopping with the Raven and Steel parallels, but anyone with a familiarity with the Wolf Zone might have a bit of fun with all the Storm Beast stuff.
Alright, well that's one story done. Next we move on to Arcanist, whom I will tell you all, I am not very good at doing DPS with Arcanist, but as far as the versus modes go, he is possibly my favorite character to use for single player. Anyway, as you can see, we're fighting Lich first this time, and we're going to be fighting everyone in a different order. And Lich is going to reuse some spell cards, or Magnuses, whatever this game would like to call them. But everyone's going to have at least one different. Like, there are 10 unique Magnuses per fight, and 12 that are shared with one other root. But characters have unique strategies, so I quite like the 4-character category. Oh yeah, so Arcanist's offensive special, as it's called, is dropping giant, what we call a moon. And I'm not really doing it here because I'm a little behind, but if I do it at the right time, it provides a very good... if I do it at the wrong time, it provides a good buffer. If I do it at the right time, then it, you can combo the CPUs very easily in versus mode.
Yeah, and we're seeing you generally DPS at range with Basic and Moon, right? And Moon, of course, not really caring about where you are on the screen currently, but once you're up close, once you're on top of the opponent, wide is quite high DPS, the spinny large quantity of bullets.
Did that a little wrong. Oh no, that's very huge lots, unfortunately. But now is the time to use the Starfall, and there we go.
Yeah, it seems like the CPUs are not very familiar with lunar technology.
So it seems. Probably should have studied the newer Touhou games.
The dead zoning is strong with this one.
Yeah. Okay, now I did Starfall at the right time. Still good to use Basic though, because they can move out of it, but sometimes they just don't, and then you get that combo hit, and it's very nice.
We're seeing this attack again from the previous run as well. Of course, the first half and the second half are the only differentiators, right, between the monsters, like you mentioned.
Yeah, well, since we're fighting Worm second, he does get one more attack. So that's the attack we're not going to see. Or, oh, I forgot to use Starfall. That's okay. Doing a little commentary while doing this, so that's fine. Mostly just doing this to showcase. I should say, though, in case anyone is interested, this is an underdeveloped speedrun. You, the person listening to this, could probably learn some things about this run, find some micro-optimizations, and get a world record.
Speaking of records, a new local record for you on that particular Magnus.
I'm getting a lot of those.
Long range paralyzed, though, that's high value right there.
Yeah. I feel like in some of my runs, I learn some things that I can use in the next run, but it still ends up being a very good run.
Oh, this pattern can get a little nasty if the gaps are misread, but getting out of there quickly with high DPS.
Having a hard time getting a hit here. That is okay. Yeah, for Arcanist, I have to make calls about whether to use Basic while focused or not, because when I press focus, the aiming arrow goes to the enemy faster. But whether I actually want it to be directed right at Frost or a little bit off is up in the air. Okay, I'm doing this attack right. This attack is... you can be a little strategic here. There we go.
Just weaving back and forth and trying to force the movement that way to make it easy.
A bit there. That's okay. But yeah, moving back and forth because I wanted to land in the death toll, and Red Hood, when we get to it, is going to have a very similar mechanic. You guys don't know who Red Hood is yet, but we'll see. Okay, this is Steelfall. This is Frost's favorite attack, like canonically or something. He really likes using this attack that is just a DPS check. And that is exactly what we're gonna see, and I missed my OS. I don't have to worry too much about the mechanics of the attack cooldowns in this, because I can kind of just spam them a lot, but when Red Hood comes up, I can talk about Backlock and Spelllock. I keep distracting myself by saying these things. It's okay. Somehow I'm still getting new records. I guess I'm just playing this way better. I guess the whole reason I have a problem with Arcanist is because it just feels hard for me to use on controller, but it's going fairly well. And Storm Beast hit herself, so I appreciate that, and she did it again, so thanks, Storm.
And also, it does help a lot, right, against Storm Beast, the Arcanist kit compared to Frost.
Absolutely. Well, actually, it's really just Novi Starfall in general that's an absolute lifesaver in this run. Arcanist is a lot harder to use than Frost, but in terms of actually getting through the versus sequences, he's quite nice.
I will say though, Novi Starfall, yet it drops a moon. How curious.
I guess Mina meant for it to be a star, maybe? Probably the case. Sometimes I just default to playing this like it's actually PvP. Like some of the strategies will just default to against the CPU if I'm not getting hit, just PvP strategies. But CPUs, forcing a hit out of a CPU is a lot different than forcing a hit out of a human. So it's not really the best thing to do if you're speedrunning this.
I guess, well, so let's talk a bit more about strategies, though, when it comes to getting hits, right? Because right now, Storm Beast is running away from the basic. Of course, it gets a hit there, but I do recall, like, you're kind of stacking them up, like you're doing now.
Right. I just like I do in PvP, actually, I want the basics to cover as much ground as possible. Right now, I'm trying to get her to stay in the death pool when it's active. Nice. I think I could have micro-optimized that a little better. I probably didn't need that last round of, oh, just basic here. Right, okay. So, yeah, I just want those death tool, or no, the basic rather, to cover as much area as possible so that the CPU has the biggest chance of getting hit possible. And I do that by kind of just using focused and unfocused versions of the attack at the right time to layer them. That part is really no different than PvP, but what is different from PvP is that I can just hit someone with a focus basic really fast sometimes and they just die. Kind of like that. Oh, this is the last character we haven't seen yet, the Silent Red Hood. This character is a little bit annoying because she is a mix of hard to hit and has some scary attacks. Luckily, Arcanist, as usual, doesn't have too much problems with her. The other character who fights her, it's a bit of a pain because you can get really fast or really slow times, and of course I want really fast. And she loves using her Vanish. Oh, by the way, I have a defensive special too, but I usually am not going to use it in the speedrun because it is almost always a time loss, unfortunately. But ironically, because it is a clock that is supposed to stop time. I guess that maybe that's expected, if anything. But because it makes the enemies that go inside it vulnerable, or invulnerable, whether it hits them or not, clock is just not a good thing to use against the versus phase. Oh, and I did a bad job hitting her there. Unfortunate. Okay, this timing's a little better, but she might get away. She got away. Okay. Just doing PvP strats. Alright. This attack is not hard.
And these debuffs just do such a significant amount of DPS as well, right? Just sneaking them in at the start, and they do that recurring DPS with a toxic and the death toll.
this is one of the things I have not mastered the time for as Arcanist. You can time them a lot better to get really efficient damage with this attack. This attack kind of loses its teeth on the lower difficulties. I didn't have the best timing there. That's okay.
Yeah, this attack is one of the ones that like looks really scary and doesn't do a whole lot. You just like move, unfortunately.
Alright, and now we get to fight Depth as our final boss.
The fan favorite Jellycat, of course, making a reappearance. Not originally called that actually, but it just happens so that the sound provider for Jellycat gave a very cat-like sound, and it also kind of looks like a cat, so the Hydra Head became the Jellycat and is now part of the Minodev cinematic universe.
Jellycat is awesome. Jellycat is the best character in this game. Alright, once again, Depth is supposed to be fairly easy to read if I do it right. Okay, that was a little bit lucky, but... For those of you watching who haven't played this game, I just have to point out how fascinating it is to have, like, an actual intelligent human using these attacks against you. The kinds of combos people can pull off are... It's the kind of fascinating thing you can't really explain in words. I think this game is like a lot about denying space, but it's also about prediction and reads.
And on the other hand as well, right? Actual humans like doing the dodging, sometimes it becomes overwhelming how well players can play defensively, especially on characters that have good defensive tools as well to give yourself a breath.
Yeah. Obviously, we have a lot of Touhou players in the audience, of course, and a lot of them have seen much more complex patterns than the versus mode patterns, but it gets really interesting when that's combined with the fact that you're playing against a human who can strategically move closer to you or further away from you to make their attacks more effective. And the kinds of dodges people pull off in the moment are very impressive and fun to see.
Death Secret is being...
well.
Yeah, I was about to say Death Secret was being a little elusive there, but you got it handled. And with the penultimate Magnus of this particular run, I guess, not much to see here other than that it may look very similar to some Rabbit and Steel content from the new DLC, so... I mean, yeah, that Magnus like is actually the most similar to the Rabbit and Steel out of everything. Definitely in that
now,
area.
The hardest attack in the game. Or at least this is the hardest attack in the game for me on the high difficulty. It's not that bad on normal. I'll talk more about why I'm playing normal when we get to Sun Priestess, but this attack has this one Jellycat. Probably reminds you of a certain Touhou pattern, but no, I am not being pulled closer to the boss, so a little bit nicer in that respect, although actually on the hardest difficulty that kind of makes it worse, if I'm being honest. Alright, and now we are done with Arcanist.
That's such a visually impressive Magnus as well, that one. Next up though, you mentioned it, Red Hood.
Right, the character we just saw. So Red Hood has very high DPS, in fact, kind of the best DPS, but it is very hard to hit the CPUs with her, or at least I find it rather difficult. Probably because her basic attack is a thin laser.
Yeah, when playing PvP, most Red Hood players almost never charge it up to maximum for that exact reason, right? Because if you do charge it a lot, then people just walk to the side and get out of there. But when it comes to DPS, on the other hand, Red Hood's DPS is looking quite good.
Yeah, she gets through these very fast. I didn't even do it as fast as I could. Okay, I finally have Bind, which is going to be very nice, because Bind at least kind of makes it more likely that the TPU gets hit eventually. It's the little stationary bullets that I place. Oh, I did that horribly. That's okay.
And of course, similar to Lich of Flowers, setting up that terrain, setting up the static bullets is quite good when you know the positions the enemies will be in.
It wasn't very good timing, actually. I like to... It's hard to explain. I like to have it a little out of sync with my knife juggles, because that makes you able to set up wide and knife juggle when the boss is just got hit and is therefore invulnerable. That went well, though. Oh, by the way, the reason I press the bind attack and then go right into knife juggle is that it's hard to use basic after bind because it has this thing called attack lock that prevents you from using basics and wides in quick succession. But knife juggle is not based on attack lock, it is based on spell lock, which applies to offensive and defensive specials, and it has a separate cooldown, basically, so I can use it right after the wide and go to basic. And in fact, I think it even resets attack lock, so I like to use basic and then a single knife and then another basic. And that is a very useful thing to do in PvP to catch people off guard. Some people would consider it a waste since you can't use your 3 knives in a row, but in certain situations it can be very potent.
Death Secret with a bit of a different appearance this time, right? With the earlier cards here.
Yeah, that is her unique card for this route. All right, hello, Sun.
Sun Priestess,
Sun's diamonds are scary, and the CPU likes to use them unpredictably.
Yeah, that move, of course, a bit of a troublemaker for most people picking up Maiden Spell in general, or especially in the versus mode. But, of course, single player, a bit of a different beast. We've seen this one before, though. And at this point in the run, right, we're seeing a lot of things that we've seen already.
Yeah, I think, like, the human Magnuses are, like, a little bit different, but kind of similar to stuff we've seen before. Like this one. Oh, nice. Didn't go through the diamonds, right? I just wanted to play that safe. Oh yeah, and so I don't use defensive specials very often as Red Hood, but her Vanish makes me able to cast another 3 knives immediately, so I can cast 6 in a row if I want to. I usually do not want to, but eh.
Yeah, unlike Arcanist, for example, casting defensive special on Red Hood is therefore not very much of a DPS loss, right? Because you could just use it and cast knives anyway, so you're kind of chilling.
Yeah. It's not, like, I prefer to have basics most of the time, but it's not the end of the world. Probably didn't use that wide there. Alright, and now this attack is very chill compared to her final attack that she had against Frost earlier. Oh, I tried to plant a knife in her hitbox and failed miserably. That is okay. Red Hood is probably the hardest part of the run. At least. I guess there's the fact that Sun is just... You can do some very optimized movements with her, but I'll explain that when we get to it. Alright, here's Worm again. Worm in the second half of this game is a lot more difficult.
Also, it comes down to movement as well, right? Red Hood, if a character moves out of the way of your basic, that does not feel very good to play against.
Yeah, Worm... she has some attacks which jumps around a lot, and that is very hard because, as you can see, when I use basic and I move while using the basic, it doesn't change direction or anything. And that is a very useful thing in versus mode, but against the boss who can move very fast very often, it's not always the best. Luckily, she stays pretty still for this attack. Cool.
And when it comes to actual gameplay in the versus mode, warm players tend to try and play in the mid-range, threaten use of the defensive, which is a massive hitbox, and of course catch you out with the wide attack, which can be mitigated by limiting your own movement, which Hourai was doing a little bit ago. And speaking of limiting your movement,
about that. This attack is pain, because she moves a lot and the bullets are actually kind of hard to dodge.
It's really looking a little bit more bullet hell-like in this particular one.
She has a final attack that's even scarier, but we'll see that in the final route because, surprise, surprise, she's going to be the last final boss. Anyway, here's Frost again.
Of course, DPS looking a lot higher, as good as ever here, and this pattern in particular, right? Pretty slow moving. You just position yourself in the right place, and getting through here. It's just so scary though when you look at the single player CPUs, and there are a lot more chances for random hits from them than from the patterns themselves in the Magnuses, I think.
Yeah. Unless you're doing like an actively risky strategy. Okay. This one's actually a little hard. Oh, I got hit. That's okay. That is what you're supposed to do if you get stunned in versus mode. That's okay though. Not my best performance there, but we'll take it. It was nice of her to get hit there.
Setting up the kunai on the invul timer is working out quite well here. And the DPS check returning, but not much of a check for Red Hood, who is going to breeze through it very easily. Might not even take 10 seconds. Wait, I like looked away, looked back. This is just Steel Fall, but again.
Yeah. But there's no Steel Fall that time. Okay, now for the easiest final boss.
It's quite sad. As a Lich player, I would like my character to be a little bit scary, but for that, maybe you'll have to go to the sequel to this game instead. Where there's a very Lich-looking character with butterflies that proves to be a bit of a challenge. But in the single player of this game, these butterflies are not doing much at all.
They're trying their best.
Yeah, they're trying their best with 2 less bullets than versus.
It's a little sad, but... Oh, that reminds me though, I can talk about part of the reason why I'm playing on normal, which, if there are lunatic Touhou players in the stream right now, which there probably are, you're probably seeing that these attacks are mostly not significant threats, pure survival-wise, although factoring in the movement speed stuff does make them a bit harder. That also means that in terms of just playing this game for the speedrun, the lower difficulties, and particularly normal, which cute is basically the same as normal. I don't know why it's there as a leaderboard. Not many people play it, But normal is very competitive because people are focusing on speed run times, and the dodging part of this is a lot more accessible. Because, like, very hard difficulty actually has some very scary patterns. The reason I was doing this for this showcase in the first place is that I was very interested in getting the records for the top 3 difficulties as Sun Priestess. And the person who had the world record, as per speedrun.com anyway, for normal difficulty with Sun Priestess was actually a semi-competitive player. I don't think they participated in tournaments much. Their name was EEF, by the way, but EEF was a Japanese player who I would find in lobbies sometimes, and we would play friendlies together, and EEF played Storm Beast. They were actually a pretty solid player. And EEF had a very, very strong time with Sun Priestess, and it was very hard for me to beat it. I worked very hard to try to figure out how to implement strategies, and I brought a few of my own findings to try to help myself get the world record in that run. And I just want to showcase every character, though, because, or every human at least, because more time to talk about this very interesting game.
Yeah, and we'll see what time you can get this time on the Sun Priestess run specifically. I expect you to have a lot more to talk about during that which is coming up now.
Yeah, because Sun was already so optimized, I pushed myself very hard to try to optimize it as best I can, and the things I do for Sun get very difficult. We'll see how it goes. Missed the timing for that basic, unfortunate. There's a very specific timing where I can wait to use my second Sunburst. It's right when those little 3D circles around the boss move. This is the high DPS strategy for this attack. This is one of the hardest things in the game for the strategies that I have. Oh, I did that a little wrong. That is okay. This attack usually goes wrong. At the beginning of the Sun run, I can reset it, of course. But no resets at this point in the full run. I did that wrong.
And Sun is a character, of course, that especially benefits from dead zoning, right? Especially because all of her wide hitboxes can connect in this case, but even in the versus mode, you do want people to try and panic, rush outward, and get hit by them. So it works out either way.
Absolutely. And diamonds are going to be the high DPS attack there. I messed it up a little at the beginning, but that is okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at your target times for this run, and they're looking very, very competitive, so your past records looking like you have played this a lot, as you have mentioned.
Oh yeah, I worked very hard on Sun. The fact that I was able to get so many personal records on the Magnuses for the other characters shows how much more work I put into Sun than them, unfortunately. Or actually kind of fortunately, because Sun was very fun to put work into. Again, even though I did, this is an underplayed game that anyone watching this, if they felt so inclined, could try getting a record in if they wanted to.
Yeah, positioning matters a lot more 3D of a sense than in Touhou, right? Especially because the attacks on characters in this game aren't linear, they're usually radial, and that kind of up-close gameplay is hugely benefited by risky positioning, of course, to some extent. Depends on the pattern.
Yeah. With Sun, I like to be a little further back. There's a certain degree of intersection that I like. It's hard to get on this one where she moves all the time, though, but I had it for a moment. Like, I like to have my orange circle intersect Storm Beast's little circle just barely. And I did some sloppy movement at the end just to finish it safely. That's okay. Okay, Red Hood is an absolute pain, but we'll see how it goes.
I already see that you're dealing with the pain by doing something that you would in Versus. You're doing the breakfast setup.
Yeah, although it's actually good against Red Hood, because I can use a Diamond Dash to chase her while she does her little vanish. Got my angle a little off there, but that's okay, we're adjusting. Alright, that was a little bad, but not the worst. Usually I can get one breakfast basic into tap wide, and then she does a vanish, I chase her with tap diamonds, which gives my speed, and then I get another hit somehow, and then I figure out the rest as I go along. It's that kind of run.
I was actually casting at Frosty Frostings the other day, and there was Eternal Fighter Zero. I guess if anyone's familiar with Soku, same developers. Okay, I'm saying if anyone's familiar with Soku on a Touhou stream. My bad. My bad.
I think some people will at least know what that game is.
But yeah, Tassofro, pretty cool. And there's a character with a super that sends you to a breakfast table with toast in your hand. And I was like, damn, you just got sent to the breakfast dimension. And then when I said that, I realized that the most breakfast coded character in any game I know is, of course, Sun Priestess, because her basics are pancakes, her wide is waffles, and her diamonds are a sinister third thing that no one has been able to create a bread name for at all.
Messed up my diamonds there, that is okay. Someone tried calling it a Namakara, but that never caught on. I remembered it though.
I also vaguely remember like croissant, but not really.
Croissant? Yeah, this is not quite a croissant. Okay. This is the hardest part. If I do this very precisely, I can get very fast time on this. And I did it right that time, more or less.
Yeah, I think the most menacing thing in that part is, of course, like the inner ring of the wide, right? The dense static bullets that you have to efficiently chase through. She's locked in.
Yeah, weaving through those is a skill that many competitive players worked hard to develop. I got it a little off this time, but that is okay. Okay, that's not great.
Oh, yeah, the Lich basic, actually, it's unassuming, it's only 3 bullets, but it is one of the scarier basics in PvP because it comes out very fast, it's very dense, and can be used to plug holes in a lot of patterns created by the butterflies.
Sun can make Lich dive very fast if you do it right. The hard part is doing it right. Gotten pretty good at it though. I should have used an unfocused basic there. Focus basic spawns a little bit closer to the player who casts it, the Sun who casts it, I mean, and activates faster.
The wide ring definitely be used by Mino in the newest Rabbit and Steel update. Not for Lich, but for a character that looks a whole lot like Lich.
Lich 2.
The Eternal Bloom. So basically the Lich of Flowers.
Okay, and now for one of the most annoying characters to fight, particularly Arcanist as Sun Priestess. She just loves using her clock.
But you're getting it done quite fast here. And speaking of music, as mentioned in the chat, Steel Plus, quite the prolific indie game composer at this point. I think notably One Step for Maiden, Duo Saviden, Maiden Spell, Rabbit and Steel, and a few other things as well. So yeah, always a treat seeing that music follow a lot of games. But yeah, like you mentioned, if the Arcanist successfully clocks herself, then that is a huge time loss as she just sits in it.
Yeah, okay. This part is hard. By the way, Sun Priestess's defensive special, Dispel, can actually clear Arcanist's debuffs, but you don't want to use it here because being giant increases your DPS a lot. If you turn on Dialogue, Arcanist gets annoyed with you for clearing your debuffs. It's pretty funny. Okay, here is a DPS check attack.
This does give quite the sense of scale, though. It does feel like the entire sky is falling on you. Except it's very slow.
Not really sure how I got great times here. Okay, Worm's another one that can be hard to manipulate if you do it wrong.
Also, one of the more concerning characters to go into melee range against, of course, like that, having to burn the Dispel there.
Yeah, unfortunately I really want to go into melee range against Worm. I want to try to bait out the defensive special Novi Fire. Unfortunately, it did not work that time. That is a little slower than I would have liked. That's fine.
Got through that one pretty efficiently.
Yeah, that's good. Alright, this attack is very easy. It's not that much harder on very hard difficulty either.
Visually quite impressive, though. It's kind of like Gates of Babylon from Fate.
Thought I'd have a little more time there.
That is a bit of a peek into versus strategy for Worm, or well, the best case scenario. Your opponent doesn't have defensive or chooses to not use defensive, is close to you, and you send out that Novi Fire and get a hit.
Sun can be very cheesy against Worm until Novi Fire comes back, and Novi Fire has a very short cooldown.
Very, very cool character design, though. A character that lives and dies by going in. But in Versus, Maiden Spell does have characters that are sometimes a bit too polarizing, right? Interestingly polarizing, but sometimes a little too much.
Everyone has a character they hate for some reason. Also, the joke people like to tell about Worm is that she has 2 offensive specials, whereas Frost has 2 defensive specials. Dodge Roll is not the most offensive, and Novi Fire is not the most defensive, considering that it freezes you in place for a moment. It does give you iframes, though. Okay, this is probably the hardest attack on normal, and second hardest, I'd say, on very hard, if you play the very hard version. Not the worst, though. Oh, and her little sun gets bigger. So, we're about to finish the run, by the way. And that is time. Alright, the sun part could have gone a little better, but I'm actually pretty satisfied with how that went.
Yeah, that was quite the compact trip throughout all 4 characters.
Yeah, there are 2 more unique extra stage-like story modes that you can play, but I will leave that for people to find in case they want to play this game. I guess there's not too much else to add, but thank you so much for hopping on, Saya.
Yeah, no problem. It's been a long while since we've last talked on voice. Until recently, it's been a while since we talked in messages at all. So, yeah, it's crazy because I think the first time we ever did tournament-related stuff was in Maiden Spell back in 2020. Our paths have diverged since then, but
yeah,
it's always cool.
We did our first commentary in the same tournament.
Yep. That was so long ago. very different places now. I'm off flying to Genesis for Horse Girl game stuff, and you're here with a Touhou replay showcase.
Yeah, Touhou has been great.
Yeah, might show my face a little bit more. Thanks for having me on.
Suppose we'll be signing off. Hope you all enjoyed, and take care, and enjoy the upcoming puzzles.
Yep, see ya.